Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Life Conversations with a Twist. This is probably my favorite podcast interview today. I'm really excited to have you on. I have Diane Mina. She is Michael Mina's wife. I always tell everyone how we met, and this is just a really cool story. A really good friend of mine, Emily, who I've actually asked her to be on my podcast a million times, and she's still
Oh,
she's just so busy, and I get it. It's fine. She will be on someday. Her and I have met through the grapevines, and her and I were having lunch one day, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited! I get to meet with somebody who has always been someone that I admired and someone I looked up to." And I'm like, "Who?" And she's like, "Diane Mina. She's Michael Mina's wife." I'm like, "Oh my God, stop! You are?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she was like so excited to go into this meeting with you. Fast forward a couple weeks later, she texts me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Diane, listen to your podcast," because there's a local influencer who was on my podcast too. I love her as well. And you would voice text her like this message. And I literally shit my pants. I just told you the story. I literally shit my pants. I'm like, Michael Mina and his wife listen to my podcast?
we did. Yes.
So that was kind of like how we met. And then I was like, started following you. And I just love your personality and like what you're doing. And so thank you so much for being here. That was a very long intro, but I'm very excited to have you here.
Oh, I'm honored to have the intro. Thank you so much, Heather. We're so thrilled. And my husband and I, we were just like, we were glued to it. It was really cool because we don't get that kind of time together. To get him to focus on what everybody's talking about and what you're bringing to the table in this space, hospitality and culinary space and food and beverage. It's really cool. So he was impressed. So
Thanks.
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I've been in the hospitality my whole life too. I started in restaurants. I worked in hotels. I've worked for venues. I worked for rental companies. Like hospitality has always been in my blood. I've born and raised in Sonoma County, which is like the biggest like food capital, I feel like, in California.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like chefs is like my celebrity. Like the people that I look up to are like celebrity chefs or people in the food world. And so I'm just really, I cannot wait to like hear your guys' story and hear what journey you're on as well. So
Thank you.
let's start. So tell me how you and Michael met. Well, actually, tell me a little bit about where you live now, where you currently reside. And I know we're going to go kind of all over the place, but I would love to, have you introduce yourself, who you are, a little bit about yourself. And then I want to take it back to Diane when you were little and like how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so present right now, we are living in Las Vegas, Nevada, which we're not strangers to. We actually started one of our restaurants in 1998. So we've been in Vegas on the business side of things since 1998. So I'll start with that a little bit. I met Chef in 1990. No, was it 90? Yeah, 90. And we opened up our first restaurant together called Aqua with our partners at the time there. And so I've been around Chef for a hot minute. So that's where we met in San Francisco. Prior to the restaurant space, I was actually on my own little journey of hospitality, working in hotels. And I used to serve high tea, scones in Devonshire and little tea sandwiches at the Four Seasons Clift Hotel off of Gary Street in San Francisco. And at the time, it was privately owned by the Werby family. And I was like, okay, I'll check out what this high tea service is. I wanted to learn all aspects of running a hotel because I wanted to be a general manager of a hotel. And I was running the tea, and Michael was the pastry guy. So he was in charge of making my scones. And sometimes they were late. I was like, who's the guy? And I didn't know who this person was. I was like, who's the guy that's always late with my scones? It's 2:05. I got to be on the... So I'm running around. And everybody's like, oh, that's Michael Mina. He came from da. Now he was a young, upcoming, fabulous chef, but I met him when he was doing pastry. Yeah. And you learn a lot in pastry. You learn a lot about timing. You would think.
Well, not with working with you, yes. You're like, this is not on time.
So, of course, this Puerto Rican Italian, I'm like, knock, knock, knock. I'm like, excuse me, are you the guy that's in charge of giving my scones? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're about 10 minutes behind schedule. So that was all it. Evidently, he said he fell in love right then and there when I started riding him a little bit. And then, so we worked together at the Four Seasons. That's where we technically met.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to learn more about pastry and how to cook. So he worked several jobs. He worked at the Opera at one of the restaurants there, and I learned how to make desserts and crack. He made me crack 180 eggs. I guess that's payback for bitching about the scones. I was like separating the yolk and thing. I was like, we were making chocolate. I was like, okay, this is fun. So yeah, and that's how it blossomed from there. And then he just started cooking for me. I'm like, all right, I'll give you a chance. And there you go.
I'm so jealous. I'm like, I love my husband, but he does not cook. And I said, in my next life, my husband will cook because I love cooking, but I would love to like come home to like this beautiful meal. But someday.
Well, and he was so sweet too, Heather, because he was like, I was actually dating someone at the time when we met at that hotel, and we just were befriending each other. He's a sweet soul. He's very intense, but he's a very, very sweet soul. And rumor had got out that the guy I was dating, he wasn't as cool as he probably should have been. And he was like, why are you with such a guy? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, what? So one day I was having a little bit of a down day, and he said, what's your favorite ice cream? I said, Jamocha almond fudge. And there it came to me hours later at the end of my shift. He lifted up this beautiful, the silver old domes. And there he had handmade this beautiful ice cream with the fudge, the almond. He just made it in the kitchen that day. I said, what's happening here? He goes, I wanted to put a smile on your face. I said, well, that worked. It didn't have no love interest presented itself at that point. And then we started to befriend each other and talk a little bit more about hospitality and dreams and family. And then the one that got to me was a Caesar salad with extra anchovies and extra crab, fresh Dungeness crab from the bay. What can I tell you? And I was like, I'm going to give you a chance.
Okay, sold. Oh my God, I love that. Does he cook for you all the time?
He not as much. I mean,
well, and I want to get to that. Like, I want to know like your guys' lifestyle because, so you guys currently own how many restaurants now?
Under the Mina Group, we have, I want to say 37, 38.
Insane.
It's a little, it's
like, I think about just one restaurant but to own 37, and they're all over the US, right?
They're all over the globe. They're in Dubai. Yeah. If you go to the if you go to the Michael Mina website, we'll have a list of all of them. And a lot of them too, Heather, there's a lot of different concepts underneath the Mina Group. One of them that we're rolling out a little bit more frequently is the bourbon steak concept. Mm-hmm. People seem to love the steaks. They're not going anywhere, steak and potatoes and fries. And but we have a lot of different concepts under that umbrella. And really it's about, people talk about teams. We live and breathe teams. There's no way these 37 restaurants, plus I think we're actually going to be at 40 at the end of this year. There's no way it's possible without an infrastructure of talent and value. It goes both ways, and just the dedication from our team. And I don't want to get emotional here. We're very passionate about our children from the F&B side, from the operations side, from the HR side, from the special events side, booking parties, the day-to-day grind, the kitchen guys, the pit crew guys. I mean, there's a lot of things. Forgive me, I say pit crew. I'm old school, but there is a whole operation to running a back dish room. You got to do it, right? So our people, a lot of our family staff have been with us for, I would say, a minimum of just a few months that are kind of coming in to up to 18, 21 years, 22 years. So that is a blessing and gift, and that's why we're able to do what we're able to do. It's constant retraining, evolving, and everybody brings value. At the end of the day, it's me and a group. Michael might make all the decisions. However, the decisions are made with a collaboration of folks. Sometimes he'll go, no, I want this. We all know Michael, or those who do, no disrespect, but at the end of the day, it is a collaboration between his chefs and his beverage managers, his operations team, our finance team. It's a collaboration. It has to be.
How many employees? I mean, I couldn't even imagine how many employees.
Well, within the Mina group, don't hold me to these numbers, but it's a pretty good amount, between 35 to 50 on task. There's in-house, and then there's folks on the road that are able to open up and do these restaurants. And then I would say 3,000 employees that work in these restaurants. And a lot of our restaurants too are actually, we partner up with hotels. So we do a lot of restaurant management agreements where the hotels themselves are interested in a Mina Group restaurant, and we collaborate with them as well. You know, you probably know this already, being in the industry, a lot of chefs don't have a lot of freestanding restaurants and own restaurants. We own Mina Group, and we have a collection of owned properties on a smaller scale, and then on the larger scale of our company are mostly restaurant management agreements where we partner up with Hyatt and the Ritz and the Marriotts and all great partners we've had in 30 years of building our brand at a smaller level of the 1 to 2 owned restaurants. And then we expand that out and we roll it out. And now we have a collection that we're really proud of. And, you know, that gives, and it's a built-in infrastructure of their team, right? So they have HR that we work with. They have social, they have media, they have marketing, they have sales. So we combine our team of our intimate team of sales, marketing, integrated that in with the hotel partnership. It's really cool. It's a difficult concept sometimes because people don't really understand. There's a lot of emotion when you have that many people involved. So everybody gets airtime, whether they believe me or not, but everybody does get airtime eventually to give input on all of our restaurants. And it's really important because, as you know, to make something for yourself, I mean, yeah, okay, we could do that. But for making someone in hospitality, the greatest gift is to serve others, in our opinion. That's why we both still work. Michael's literally in the kitchen still. So it's really cool.
I was curious about that. You've almost 40 restaurants in 25 years, 26 years.
Yeah. So we opened up the Mina Group. We partnered with Andre Agassi, who's our business partner. We have several partners in different aspects, but Andre is the one who, when Michael won Best Chef of California in 2002, we opened up the Mina Group in 2004. We had moved away from our partnership at that time. We were rolling out the Aqua concept, and that partnership, just turned out, and we were kind of had a house, had 2 kids. We were like, oh no, what are we going to do? And Andre, who's just, what a blessing he is. Him and Steffi came in and said to my husband back in 1999, said, hey, if you ever want to do a restaurant, I love cooking. And that blessing came to fruition, and he partnered up with us, gave us our start, gave us our platform to have chef and 3 other operators and 1 phone and a desk in an office off of Gary Street in San Francisco. We're like, now what do we do? So we did, with no kitchen, we had relationships, we had intelligence, we had talent, but we didn't have a space to put the kitchen. So we were in an office building this, I know it's kind of a weird word to say empire, but collection. I don't like to use that word empire. I like to say collection. So if that's okay. Change words around.
I love that. Did you ever think like this was going to be your path? Like we all, well, I mean, clearly you're an F&B and like myself, like I just worked at a restaurant as a hostess and I was like, yeah. And here I am still in the hospitality industry and I love it. And I love everything about it. And I try to find myself trying to get out of it because I'm like so overdoing events, but like I find myself back in it again because it's like this weird addiction and you probably know what that is like.
Correct.
But like, was this your path? Like when you were growing up, you're like, I'm going to be in the food world, or like, what is it that you kind of thought your life would be like? And clearly it made a huge turn.
Well, great answer. And I can also say to you, it lives in your veins, Heather, right?
Yes.
It lives in your veins. You're going to be like, I'm tired of it. But real brief here. I grew up I was born in Long Island, that place on the East Coast. And at some aspect of my life, I was always exposed to hospitality, food and dining. On my mother's side, her parents, both Italian. On my dad's side, Puerto Rican, or the Italian side, and then my dad, Puerto Rican family. So I always try to say my parents are like the West Side Story. My mother was of a affluent, very, fancy Italian family. And there's my daddy, with very skilled laborer, plumber, engineer, Puerto Rican. Okay. Both worked hard, both had what they needed to, just very different backgrounds. Okay. They were not poor by no stretch of the imagination, but different, right? So my grandfather on my mother's side, so my poppy, my mother's father, Charlie Campaign, used to have a feed store, and he would drive his truck all around towns of Bethpage. And my grandfather was born 18, oh my gosh, 18, what? I wanted to bring this up because I'm like, when was he born? And he would drive his feed truck, Charlie's feed truck, all over Bethpage, dropping off seed. And back then they didn't have Long Island didn't have acreage and farms. They would actually plant potatoes and vegetables along a driveway. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but or a small little patch, and your grandmother Nona would be in the backyard, this big, and you're like, and it's the best meal you've ever had, right? Because it's just like her nails getting in there and popping, crazy. So I've always been around laborers and family meals. My grandfather, Charlie Campaign, used to take me to Italian restaurants from when I was a young girl. He also had a trucking company. So the feed store grew into this big trucking company for Grumman Airspace back in the day. Grumman was really still big, but it was bought out. And he had a gas station, and behind the gas station were all these Campaign trucks. And I would go on deliveries. I'm like, this is the funnest thing ever. My mother's like, what are you doing? I'd be drinking a little bourbon on the side. I'm 10 years old. I'm like, Mom, I'm fine. They got me. Tony Marabella, Vince, everybody, all the Goombas were there, driving me all over the place. Go to the red checkered tablecloths. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. What a life. So really on my mother's side, just really entertaining, fabulousness, pool tables, some of the, just too many fun stories. And then on my dad's side, Puerto Rican, everybody, just Puerto Rican, rice and beans, and empanadas. And so I was always around that. And I found, to what you're saying, I found that really engaging. I found that really connective, because everybody worked really hard, but we treasured weekends together. We treasured them. We spent time together. You were sitting down at 5 o'clock, my brother and I with my mom and dad. You're sitting down and you're having a meal. Doesn't matter what kind of day. Get off your 10 speed. We're eating together. So, 10 speeds. So
now those are get off your phone. Time to eat now.
Yeah. So, I can go on about that, but that's I've always been in that little space. And then schooling was not my thing. I have dyslexia. So it's hard for me to talk about that as a 57-year-old woman because a lot of people don't know about it. I'm not afraid to talk about it. It's just that I never really went into, I didn't know what I had till later in my life. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And not to say there's any excuses of why I didn't like school, but I had a hard time going through school and what have you. So no college degree here, but I knew I needed to go in hospitality. I felt like connecting with people was my greatest strength. Mm-hmm. And being a hostess, that's where I started. And I thought, as you know, that's your first impression to meet with people. So that was really cool. So I graduated from high school in 85, got out early, actually in December. I was like, I'm done with this, Mom. I gotta get out of school. And I went and worked with her at the travel agency. And I started working with people in that aspect, worked at the reception desk, but I was always bitten by, the hospitality, the hotel industry. And then I started dabbling into I did hostesses. I had more than one job. I did paper routes. I did house cleaning for a little bit. Hostess, I had my own cleaning business, and that's where I met Michael. I had my own cleaning. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have my own cleaning. I have my own supplies, because that's my Puerto Rican side of the family. My grandmother was anal about cleaning. So I was like, why not? I'll clean other people's houses. It's not beneath me. What the hell? So it was hysterical. It was just too funny anyway. So yeah, thinking back now, really, really cool stuff. So graduated, and then my first job in hotel was 1988, and I opened up the Hyatt Regency in Burlingame. And I loved it. I loved working the front desk. I loved checking in people. It was right next to the airport. So sometimes we'd get what's called a distressed passenger flight where flights got canceled. So now I'm booking 400 people at one time. I'm like, pre-reg check-in. How fun is that? 300 people in my face. Let's go. I'm always, I'm always moving and going. So loved it. And then the earthquake happened and I was out of a job, and then went and worked at restaurants and met Chef. And there you go.
Wow, what a cool story. So food and hospitality has always kind of been in your blood. You can tell you have the personality for it. Like, I think you have to have the personality for it. I keep telling my kids, all of my kids, when you get your first job, it will be in a restaurant. I don't care what you say, it will be in a restaurant.
Great life skills.
So much great. And then I've met so many great friends, like people who are still my best friends to this day, through the restaurant business. And like, it's fun. I actually miss hotels. That's funny that you say that, because there's always a little part of me that's like, oh, I wish I could work for a hotel again, because that was a fun time.
It is a good time. Hopefully some of my aspirations on this, I think I'm still young enough. I don't know. I'd still like a B&B. I think that bed and breakfasts are not as a grand scale, because I want it to be a Hyatt. I want to work for Hyatt and be like, a general manager. There's not a lot of female general managers at that time. There was like, I think 137 in the group at the time. And I was like, I'm going to be 139. I'm going to do it. And but now being in it and loving it, I love the bigness of it, the grandeur of it. Now I think more intimate. Having a bed and breakfast is always something that, who knows what's going to happen. The journey took a different turn for me, a twist, as you would say.
That's your twist. What is your role within the company now? Like, we'll get into a little bit of like what your focus is, but like, what are you just there as a supporter and a wife, or like, are you involved in any of the certain restaurants or projects?
You know what? I have to say, earlier on, kind of part of the development piece, talking about aesthetics and more design. I don't want to say design, because I'm not a designer, but kind of Michael was always asking about input of warmth, atmosphere, lighting, what people would like to experience. But no, I don't have an active role. I have to keep my husband on the rails, and that's my greatest joy, because it's difficult. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of passion. He's extremely intelligent. His mind never shuts off. And my job early on, I knew that I had to keep him calm. And I don't always do that. You've already met my personality, so I'm a handful. However, and sometimes I can taper it down, but for the most part, when we fell in love, I fell in love with not only the person who he is and how kind and gentle, but he's so passionate about what the gift that was given to him. Mm-hmm. And he's recognized it in such a way that I don't want to say, the word perfect gets a bad rap, because striving for perfection could mean anything. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. What I'm saying is, if he wants to make a beautiful dish for somebody and he sees it in his mind, it better be perfect when it gets to that plate. Mm-hmm. Is that okay to say? Yep. When I want to make a beautiful, if you talk to flower arrangements or people who put flowers together, or artists are different mindset people. In their mind, an artist on a canvas can make a circle and then they can color it in, and we're like, that's fantastic. Like, no, that's not perfect. So I think it's a very personal perfection that people feel as entrepreneurs, as creators, as builders, as welders, as anybody that's using their hand and looks through their eye, sees the world differently through the eyes of a creator, is very different from something being, oh, I have to turn this has to be, and even then, that's not a judgment thing. I'm just saying that I knew early on his intensity was a lot. And I thought when we got together, I was like, okay, 8 restaurants is what he told me. That's what he said, Heather.
How many? 8?
Yeah, he said, the goal is 8 restaurants early on, because, I miss him and I don't get to see him that much. And he's on the road a lot, probably 200 days out of the year. And it's a lot. And he hasn't really changed that schedule. The longest we've ever spent together was our honeymoon in 1994 for 4 weeks. That's the last, that's aside from the COVID piece, that's the longest we've ever spent together in one place together, was our honeymoon in 1994. That's not a complaint. That's not a martyr thing. That is the actual facts. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot. in that space. And Chef is like, I mean, you can't be in love. You can't not be in love with that type of passion, right? And anything else aside of that, it was like me missing him. I can get through that. I could talk to him about that. Him not being home for dinner, okay, I can get through that. Him not being, around for every car pickup with the kids, I can get through that. He was there the day my mother passed away, and he was there at the birth of my children, our children. He's been there on very, very, very impactful days, and more than that. But yeah, it was my job to keep him on the rails. And it
So
was
he's traveling that much, 200 days out of the year.
oh yeah, he has not stopped.
Do you go a lot with him?
You know what I don't? I'm not a big fan of flying. I have found out as I've gotten older that I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I drive a lot of places. I think that, and when I do travel with him, sometimes I don't like him to feel a pull of spending time with me when he has to do what he needs to do. There are times where if he has an opening and he's gone for 6 or 8 weeks during that opening, I might come in at the tail end when things are kind of done and be supportive. And that seems to be the best part, because listen, he wants to be with me. We want to be together. But I also know the pull when someone's in your space, but they have to get the job done. And that a lot of people are relying on him. Like, he has a lot of people to answer to.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I might be saying that I'm taking second place in this. I don't consider it that way. But what I'm saying is we always put people first. And it's actually God first. And then we serve others. And then we know we're going to find time with each other. I don't know if it's a 1, 2, 3 thing,
Yeah, I love that. How many kids do you guys have?
2 boys, 27 and 23.
Are they in the food business, or are they like,
Not.
no?
They are not. I think they learned early on, Heather, because we'd have parties and events and Thanksgivings, and I did auctions at school, and when they were tiny little babies, I was like, okay, we got to play in the kitchen. They're like, no. They had no desire. So our youngest, Anthony, is graduated from NYFA, the New York Film Academy in Los Angeles. He's a screenwriter, loves it. And our oldest, Samuel, is actually living here in Nevada temporarily. He's supporting his dad, working and getting on the business side, learning about the operations of the company on the financial side. So we're happy. Cool. So he's in the company, but he's not cooking.
He's not in the kitchen. I love that. It was so funny the day that you and I corresponded on Instagram. I was in Truckee, and lo and behold, I come down from North Star, and there's the restaurant, and I was like, it's not open. I was so bummed.
Wasn't open when you were there?
Because we were in between seasons, I guess. They closed.
Oh, darn it. Okay.
I was like, but my husband and I's favorite restaurant is International Smoke. Whenever we can get away for a date night, that's where we head, is San Francisco. And it's so fun. And then we're staying at the MGM. We're actually coming to Vegas to come to, my husband's a Raider fan. So we're coming to support the Raiders in December. And we're staying at MGM. And I was like, there's an International Smoke there.
There is. Well, send me a message. I'd love to see you guys, and maybe we can get you out from us. Check out some other places if you'd like.
Yeah, grab a glass of wine or something. Yeah, I would totally. Okay. I'll definitely connect with you. But I wanted to know, because so you have a lot of restaurants, and you talked about the pandemic, and here in Sonoma County, a lot of restaurants are closing, literally left and right. How do you think you guys have been so successful in the restaurant space in the kind of climate we're in right now?
Great question. I'm going to go back to the infrastructure of our company and the belief in the value of our brand, and kind of staying in our lane of what we're trying to achieve and what does our partners want? What do they want? The cost of running a restaurant is extremely expensive. We all know that. The cost of anything is. And reevaluating our positioning with our partners every time is what we do. That's why Michael's so involved. We have 3 phone calls a week just with his ops team, right? And those can go 2 to 3, 5 hours. That's Chef committed to his team, looking at the numbers. How do we improve this one location? We've had some closures. We've been blessed not to have that happen for quite some time during COVID when everybody was shut down. My husband and his team did the Mina Family Kitchen, because the most devastating piece of that is the people that work for you when restaurants close.
Yeah.
Because they put in all this time. I don't want to get emotional. They put in all this time. They put on all this effort. And when you can't provide meals for them because they're there for 8 to 10 hours at a time, that was devastating. Like, how these guys rely on us. And there's the insurance and there's all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's super essential and important. But it was the community that we miss. And that's what I think is most heartfelt when you hear about these restaurants closing, is the community that's lost with it, within the restaurant and what's built out from there. So staying in our lane, knowing our concepts, understanding that price gouging is not what this is about. We follow what's happening to everybody, but still try to listen. A lot of the times we're always sending our own resources back into the company. That's a huge thing, not taking everything goes back into the company, goes back into the employees. Super important. We want to be profitable. Who doesn't want to be profitable? But when you have hiccups like that, you have to always reinvest in your staff. You have to always reinvest in your company, and to make sure that things can operate that way. If you have that, I mean, we're very lucky to be in the business for a long time. Mm-hmm. For someone right now to open up a restaurant is difficult. It's difficult just for permitting alone and licensing and the liquor depending on what the concept's going to be. And to what you're saying before about the celebrity piece of it, it's really, we find ourselves in that position where we groom talent within, because you can have a great concept and someone has been dying to open up a restaurant, Italian restaurant, but they didn't go to cooking school. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the platform of resources and all that kind of good stuff. But those are difficult. Those are the kind of stories that break my heart when someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna open up a restaurant." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" But because we have the blessing of so many people in our company that aspire to have their own restaurant, they already have that blessing and that platform of those relationships, right? So in 25 years, we have a chef de cuisine or executive sous or a line crew, a hostess. They've been through the Mina platform of restaurants. They've opened up restaurants. So they're getting education on the fly right then and there. So it's not just coming straight out of school. We do have a lot of people that come straight out of school and they do their internships, their externships and what have you. But to stay afloat today, I think is really challenging. I don't know if I have a secret sauce for that, only because of the way time is. Yeah. How we've stayed afloat is our team. How we've stayed afloat is reinvesting back into our team and making sure the quality is always there. Because that's the other thing too, is that everybody's single dollar, they want a lot what they want with that. And that's okay. They should kind of, I don't want to say demand, let's be easy with that word. But if you're going to put our restaurants or collections are premier, right? And they expect that as well. Our partners expect that as well. You hear about these branded franchise restaurants that are doing well, the In-N-Outs, the Chick-fil-A's and all of it. And those are, that's great. But there's a lot of other people that would like to put their talent out there. So, I find it to be a struggle. And we're hoping that through another part of our company, and I'm not sure exactly how much more I can speak to this without having it buttoned up, but we want to continue fellowship in this space. And that's why I think if more hospitality teams can build within to build those strengths up, maybe that'll help the closures of everything. But, sometimes you just hit a wall. Sometimes concepts just don't work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's definitely a bummer. And I hope.
And Napa is shocking to me because Napa restaurant there, and what you guys have at your fingertips. It breaks my heart to hear about that.
Yeah. Especially these the smaller restaurants, right? And it's like those ones you fall in love with. You go in and you fall in love with the food and the team. And then like 6 months later, they're closing and you're like, oh, but I really liked that place. Like, I'm definitely like a creature of habit. Like, once I find ones that I love, like I just continue to go back there. And so, yeah, I hope things change. I hope where we live now, I'm part of a hospitality association. I'm working more on the
Oh,
membership side, but we do a lot of advocacy, and that's something that I would love to see happen more. Is like, how do we support our restaurants?
yes.
Um, whether that's, advocating for them at, the state level or whatever, because it's literally every day a restaurant is closing in Sonoma County, and it's just like, it
Oh,
sucks, and it's like, ugh,
oh,
they make it so hard again, to have a business here. So I was just curious, like, what your guys' success is, clearly, because you keep, I'm like, every week you're like, here's a new restaurant. I'm like, yeah, go. You just have
and
to train
again,
all the rest of us.
I understand. Well, and understand again the the way the company is formed with the RMAs of having the built-in relationships definitely helps. Don't ever give up. If it's a dream for someone, don't ever give up. And just more education for the smaller businesses, for restaurants. I think that the CIA there in where is that?
Yountville or Napa.
I think they run
St.
some
Helena.
nice St. Helena. They run some nice programs. I'm actually sitting. I'm up on the food business school, and I'm a mentor. And there's people that are graduating through CIA, and they're you get to put in your experience so that these young adults who want to get into this business can ask a lot of questions to mentors who've already been there. Product, manufacturing, restaurant ownership, financially is a big deal, right? A lot of people, I have to plug in my computer. A lot of people have to, I'm so sorry. I just realized it's like this one. A lot of people, financially, it's a big deal. So if you don't have that $2 to $3 million in your pocket, it's challenging. I know that, and that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. You can't open up a restaurant for $100,000 anymore. Why?
Yeah.
So you're always kind of relying on a partnership. And then if you have a $50,000 opening and then you just have to pay rent, that's $11,000 a month, you're always going to be upside down. So, I love what you're saying there, because I think education is key. And if we can build more programs to get that young talent in, and I'm interested in the state piece, how much of the state, because we talk about the fact that California, what it has to offer in the culinary and beverage space, it's unreal, between the wines and just all the vegetation, all the goodness, and there's so much goodness there, right? And we got to use it. We got to put it to use, and we got to feed the people. So
Yep, I love that. I love the work that you're doing. I can't wait to hear more about that line of work. Tell us about the Bloody Mary mix and this is your little project, and I want to hear like what inspired you to start it, and a little bit more about what the work you do in that.
Well, that's the twist here, because I was young in Long Island, and I was drinking Bloody Marys at 10 years old with my grandfather. We would have the clam bakes, and he'd be like, I'm like, what's that little red yummy thing? He'd be like, don't tell your mother. It was a lot of don't tell your mothers back then.
Yeah.
And so I was drinking them. I was attracted to the umami-ness of a Bloody Mary. And then it was that and chocolate yoo-hoos. Do you know what the yoo-hoos are?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was my thing. I didn't do soda pop. So I loved them as a young child. And then, it was definitely a different turn, because I loved hotel and restaurant operations, as we talked about. And then an opportunity came in 2000, and I would make Bloody Marys. What I'm missing on a big point is when I became of age to make them legally, when I was hanging out with Chef and we'd have all these big parties, Thanksgiving dinners, I always made the Bloody Mary bar. It was always this big thing. If you're a connoisseur of Bloody Marys, you go all out.
Yep.
Well, Chef did the food aspect, and I did all the bar. So whether it was Bloody Marys, margaritas, you name it, I'm making it. So it was front of the house, back of the house situation. So that's kind of how just the funness came to life. And everybody was always like, oh my gosh, Diane, can you make us your Bloody Mary? I'll have a Diane's Bloody Mary. I'm like, okay. So that's Diane's Bloody Mary just started like that, in an environment, hanging out, a good time. You've heard these stories before. And I wasn't making them from scratch back then, but I was using things like Clamato, okay, which I now know has a lot of sodium. Okay, now that I've been doing this for 10 years, I've learned some things. No judgment, folks, but here's some things. So I was using other mixers to make my final product. So I would put in just my special nuances, okay? And it became Diane's Bloody Mary. So it just kind of, I gotta tell you, Heather, it just happened. So it literally just happened. I'll have Diane's Bloody Mary and all the tailgates. Oh my gosh, we were going to Candlestick. Remember Candlestick? We would watch the 49ers. And I would drop down the tailgate and I'd have all these garnishes. Adios mio. Our one day off, we would just do this whole thing. So I loved making them. I love the way they taste. Always. I mean, you got to love something, right? That much. Yep. And then in 12, 13, my husband had an opportunity when the Candlestick was closing and they were going down to Santa Clara. They were pitching, they were reaching out to local chefs of the Bay Area. Michael was one of them, about a concept. They wanted to have a really upscale restaurant inside the Levi Stadium down below. Premier space, blah, blah, blah. So, but they wanted to have a really cool experience for like a ticketed event, kind of like what do they call them when you, it was a membership,
okay.
Membership program. So they wanted people to buy in. Aside from the seats, they wanted a culinary experience at the Levi Stadium, at the base of it. And so they were pitching to all other chefs. I can't mention the other ones because I don't want to get into trouble, but there was 5 chefs that were in the collection, and Chef Mina was one of them. So he was adorable, and he pitches me this idea about this Michael Mina tailgate, what we had been doing together for 20 years. We took our one day off, we turned it into a concept.
I love it.
What are you talking about? So they love the idea. And Michael's like, oh, we'll bring in, if we're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, we'll find out who's the chef in Philadelphia. So then we'd go through all this marketing and find out who's the hot chef in Philadelphia. So then we would invite that Philadelphia chef to come and go head to head with Chef. So it was not only competitive on the field, it was competitive in the Michael Mina tailgate. It was hysterical.
Oh my God,
however, do I have time to plug this in?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pick you up and come with me. Okay, so
my team will edit it.
Okay, please do. Please hold. Please hold.
So don't say anything important yet.
Oh
my God, that happens to me all the time. I'm actually plugged in right now because I'm like, oh, I can't forget to plug it in.
But now I'm in a different spot. Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. So here we go. Okay.
Background change.
Okay.
So this concept.
Yeah. So the Michael Mina tailgate was born, and I said, "Oh, that's so exciting, honey! Congratulations!" My normal MO. I'm like, another restaurant. This is really cool. And he goes, "There's one little caveat." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, I told them that you make really good Bloody Marys, so they want a Bloody Mary activation." And I said, "What? Okay. What the heck does that mean?" He's like, just do what you do. Do what you do on the weekends when we're together. I'm like, okay. Big platform, new thing. I'm like, nervous wreck. I'm like, what do you mean by that? So long and short, we're with some friends in Lake Tahoe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my husband just got this incredible opportunity. And then he put me into the mix. This is the first time, he's putting me in the mix of his restaurant collection. This is a big deal. He's like a really cool chef, and wow, he must think I got something. So she's like, you do have something. You do have something. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So she goes, ask your husband if you can make your own mix. He'll do anything for you. I'm like, well, maybe he will.
You're all, yes, he will.
So fast forward. So I go to him nervously. I'm like, listen, chef, I'm so excited for this opportunity and to be working together. Let's be real. I was more thrilled, Heather, about that. Learning from him in this space. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to be with my husband in a restaurant. This is so cool. What am I going to do? So I had to have my shit together. Can I say shit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so I pitched him a deal. I wrote it out and I said, listen, honey, I think I can do this. I want to do this, but I'm a little nervous. I'd like to create my own blend, if that's okay. He goes, absolutely. He goes, what will that require? I go, well, and little rewind. We were living in West Marin. Do you know Nicasio?
Yep.
You know the little town?
Yep.
And we had 3 acres there. And there was no plantation. There was nothing but weeds growing in them. It was beautiful. It was like really nice kept landscape, but we had a whole area in the back that was just begging to be loved with something. I don't know. I wasn't growing any vegetables, like my upbringing. I didn't have any flower picking garden. I was like, oh, okay. So I said, what about if we planted the tomatoes? And I made my own recipe, my scratch recipe. He goes, that's a great idea. Do all the work, find out how much it's going to cost me, meaning him, and we'll go from there. I'm like, okay, that's fantastic. So that's how it happened. So we partnered up with this wonderful landscaper. Her name is Denise Wall, and she is amazing. She's Mother Earth. She's just amazing. And I said, this is what I need to do. So I planted all kinds of varietals, including some ingredients, some of the cilantros and other spices, what have you. But mostly it was about the tomato. I wanted a better product that was, and you probably heard this from a lot of people, entrepreneurs with anything, right? I want a better X, I want a better this. So I knew that through that process, I would learn from one of the most brilliant chefs on the planet, in my opinion, of how to bring this to life from a scratch recipe to the people of the new stadium. So I knew a little bit more than I thought too, Heather. I was pretty proud of myself, from my grandparents cooking and learning from chef and doing a lot of research. I learned a lot, and I was so proud of myself. So I came up with this recipe, and it was lovely and delicious. I'm very proud of it. But I literally planted, and I can share some pictures with you if it's helpful, but I literally planted we took about a quarter acre of our property and just dredged out a bunch of tomato vines and lines. I had 11 rows. It was.
I love it.
It was crazy. And I'd be out there
still growing tomatoes.
No, not at the scale that we are now. But like, I was out there 4 o'clock in the morning picking off those big worms. I was like, what are these green things? So, but I would literally batch. So our first year at the Tailgate Stadium, it was Diane's Bloody Mary bar, a girlfriend of mine, very sweet, custom designed. My antique bar was all antique barnwood and corrugated steel tin. It was awesome. And so I had my own little U-shaped wheeled out bar in this big mecca of Michael Mina, but I had a little tiny space right there. And it was the hottest thing going, I have to say, aside from Michael's lobster dogs and all that kind of stuff he made. So, because we'd have to open up at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I would make the product. It was a 4-day production. So Thursday, I would drop the tomatoes. I would harvest everything, put them in 5-gallon buckets. I would make sure that we were using at the time heirloom tomatoes. We were using black trifles and one other one. I can't believe I don't remember the other one. Anywho, I put together 2 different types of heirlooms, and the flavor profile was off the charts, velvety and delicious. I was like, wow. So I would make those in 5-gallon buckets. So I would hand churn them. Very similar to like applesauce. I had 10 people at my house every Thursday, right before the Sunday game. It started on Thursdays, me, whippersnapper. I'm like, okay, guys, 1,000 pounds. We need 1,000 pounds. So I had my dad and my stepmom, my girlfriends, everybody part of this crew with a little paring knife. I'm like, take out that mold. Mold isn't good. Throw it away. And I'd be dissecting everybody's work. Crazy. And then that would rest for 48 hours. And then I folded in all the other ingredients. So then we go live on Sunday. And I'm telling you, Heather, we had like 1,100 people, our first opening, 1,400 people. And we banged out probably 800, 900 Bloody Marys of service. Bing, 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 bing. So by 2000, so that was 2014, 2016, the president of Williams Sonoma Retail at the time was Janet Hayes. She came through our line because my husband, again, what a sweetheart, he brought all the people of influence that loved. He was like, you got to meet my wife. You got to see what she's doing. I'm like, I was just a team player. I was just like, I was a line cook. I was like, look at me go. But they were like, he's like, you got to try my wife's stuff. She puts in out, blah, 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 blah. He was very complimentary. So she comes through my line, she has the drink, and she's like, what is this? I said, I don't know. It's fantastic, isn't it? And she's like, yes, it is. Do you want to, I love this. It's better than our mix. Would you like to bottle it? And I said, are you kidding? I don't know a thing about that kind of stuff. Lo and behold, 7 months later, I'm like, what do you think? And so I went to the corporate office with my garden in tow baskets. I had tomatoes, I had all my 23 ingredients in pods, and my husband was there.
Oh.
And he came with me and he's like, we're going to do this today. So I did my presentation. I was very nervous. I had 16 people and I was like, this is what we got. And they're like, how many stores do you want? I go, how many stores do you got? How many stores you got? They're like 220. I'm like, I'll take them all. And so we launched with Williams Sonoma in 2017 and all 220 stores, 2 SKUs, Diane's Original and the Dirty Diane. And we termed that relationship in 2020. So when Williams Sonoma brings on new products, they bring them on for 3 years because they want a nice rotation of talent to come through and to give everybody that opportunity. But not everybody has that opportunity. That was a blessing that I don't know, again, a higher calling, because we were in a position where my Bloody Mary mix from scratch that I made, there was exposed to someone who can help us get our name out there. So then we bottled it. And then after we termed out, which was 2020, which what happened in 2020, we had all this product and the people loved, but I no longer had the relationship of distribution through Williams Sonoma. So then we hooked up with our 30-year relationship of Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, did a presentation with them. And now we're in 6 markets with Southern Glazers, and amazing.
I love that story. What a great story.
And I opened up under our brand. I opened up my first solo restaurant at the Burbank Airport, which Emily is she's so amazing. She's my biggest supporter. Every time I'm feeling a little blue, she's like, don't you stop. But it's called Diane Mina's Backyard Bar and Eats. And it is literally the exact, pretty close to the same concept that I had as a Bloody Mary bar. I did a pop-up, Diane's Bloody Mary pop-up in San Francisco. So after, in 2018, we had what was called the Mina Test Kitchen. The Mina Group bought a building and they ran all these concepts. That's another thing to go back to. So you talked about many concepts. Before you put this was another blessing. Like a lot of chefs say, oh, I want to open up, I don't know, a falafel house. I don't know, something. We had my husband and his team came up with this idea of having a test kitchen. You've heard of them today, but this was done years ago, where you can test the concept out, very similar to what New York does. They do pop-up concepts and they run them, they sell tickets, and people give you feedback. Oh, this didn't work, whatever. So before you put in that $5 or $10 million into a concept that people are like, what? It's flame throwing, what is that? So, that's the other thing too. You have to test your concept out. It's huge. If you can't test it, I think that also plays into some things closing. I only mean, am I saying that okay?
No, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So know your
market. Or they open a restaurant with like 50,000 menu items on it.
Yeah, too big. So the Mina Test Kitchen was exactly that. So we ran, on the Mina Group side, we had an Indian concept, we had a Mexican concept, we had the international smoke concept. That's why we had more international smokes. Working with Aisha, obviously, her talent is sublime. Having our culinary team take her recipes, Michael's recipes, and building that concept. Like I said, the Italian concept. So we've had a lot of concepts come through that space. And then it was sitting dormant for a hot minute in 2018. And I went back to my husband. I'm like, okay, so now I have all this great product. And I have a team of 4 people. How do I get my product out to the world? And I said, husband, do you think you could let me use the Mina Test Kitchen? He's like, what do you want to do? I said, well, I don't have a sales team. I can't do bottle sales. I said, I'm going to bring the people to me. He's like, well, how are you going to do that? I said, well, you got that empty space in the marina. 16 tables, Heather, 16 little tables and a little bar. I did all the design myself with my family and friends, painters, electricians. The Donna who built my bar, she came and she did all of the work. I mean, Lisa, her and I opened up crazy, beautiful, beautiful experience. And we started that in February of 2018. We opened up June of 2018. And it was Diane's Bloody Mary Bar in the marina. And we had served 12,000 people in 6 months. And it was the coolest concept because the menu that was created, I worked really hard on this menu as well. from my some favorites from my youth in Long Island, to some favorites that Chef and I made together, and then really brunch items that went with the Bloody Mary mix. So it was a Bloody Mary concept, and then the menu followed second. And it was really cool. So that has now been brought to life all these years later in the Burbank airport. And we just celebrated our first year, October 27th.
Oh, that's so cool. What a great story. Are you going to open another one?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Well, if you
So
can.
here's the funny thing is people are like, well, wait a minute. So you guys, so now under the Terra, so the name of our company is Terra Mina, that produces Diane Mina's Garden Grown Blends, which is featuring Diane's Bloody Mary. And I'm actually doing more SKUs. I'm going to do a margarita mix. I'm going to do some more blends, but it's been really challenging because, again, trying to get our product out there, growing another SKU, it's a little tough. It's a little tough. Even it doesn't, I mean, yes, being married, we are very fortunate who I'm married to, opportunity, the relationships, but it's still challenging. Female-owned business, it's still challenging.
I love it. I cannot wait to see what you do. I have to wrap up because I have an appointment to get to. But I
Okay.
like literally seriously could sit here all day and talk to you.
All day.
Like I have so many more questions. I might have to have you back on the podcast. But I just want to thank you for like opening up your home and your, you know, your story and your journey. And it's been really cool and inspiring to watch you guys from afar and see. I mean, we didn't even get to talk about Chef's all his accomplishments, even in the last like 6 months, all these things that
Oh, I
keep
know.
popping up.
Crazy.
But
Just his cookbook, everything.
his cookbook, it's so cool. So if anyone's not following you, like they need to, and Michael and everything that you guys do. But I just want to thank you so much. And I cannot wait to meet you in person someday.
Yes, look me up when you get here soon.
I will,
Thank you.
for sure.
It's a pleasure to be on the show. I can always talk to you too. We'll do it again.
We will.